everybody to our November Learning Series webinar. Today we're going to be talking about smarter data with Excel. This was a by request topic we added as we were putting together the schedule for the second half of the year. Before we got started, we were talking backstage, and I was saying to Jolynn, there was a period in my life a while back where I started pursuing an MBA, and one of the classes I had to take was on leveraging Excel for data analysis. And the first assignment was to take a profit and loss statement and format it with all of the formulas and single underlines and double underlines with the proper indentations and so forth. And those of us that were in the program that had been working with Excel for a while, I think I knocked out the assignment in about 40 minutes. And those that were, folks that were pursuing masters straight out of their undergrad struggled with it for like 22 hours and still couldn't get it to format correctly. We're going to go way past formatting today and talk about ways that you can slice and dice data and perform some data analysis. And so I'm looking forward to picking up some new tricks today as well. Our presenter today, as with most of our learning series sessions to date, will be Jolynn Wren. Jolynn's a 30-year plus professional development training coordinator and is a Microsoft Master instructor. I, in my day job here, am Dave Delvecchio. I'm VP of Marketing and Communications for Sourcepass. I too have been working in this field for over 30 years, which is long enough to remember things like the launch of Windows 95. And now that we're into the Windows 11 world, it's pretty amazing to look back at everything in between. So this is a continuation of our learning series webinars. We tend to run these on the second Wednesday of every month. And the focus of these webinars is to help folks get more out of their existing investment in technology. And so with the predominance of 365 as a productivity platform for most organizations, our trainings have leaned heavily on the 365 universe. We also have our digital transformation series webinars, which are typically on the fourth Wednesday of the month. If you want to check out prior editions of either webinar series, please visit our video library on our website. We actually ran more of an Excel Beyond the Basics course, which is a nice kind of precursor to this course. And so if you're looking for Excel training, there is another webinar that we had from, I think it was about a year and a half ago, but it's still very relevant to today. So feel free to look that up along with other webinars that might be of interest. As far as upcoming webinars, we have another webinar next week. This is part of our Sourcepass Gov business unit. So we have a specialized business practice that focuses on the needs of municipalities, K through 12 education, and small towns and villages of New York. Although this is open up to everybody, you don't have to be any of those. We're going to be talking about AI for the public sector. Rob Villano from our security team is going to be leading that discussion. And what we've noticed is while we've been promoting this, a lot of nonprofit agencies are jumping into this as well. So this is not restricted solely to public sector organizations. If you'd like to sit in and listen to Rob's presentation next week, you can go ahead and register for that. Our November Digital Transformation Series is going to be on Tuesday, November 25th. We did move it up a day just because we didn't want to try to run a webinar on the afternoon before Thanksgiving. And we're going to be talking about how smart companies scale IT. Matt McCarthy, our Chief Client Officer, and DIPS, Deepak Pachal, member of our sales team, will be leading that discussion. And then our learning series in December is going to be an update from our Quest development team, who are going to be going over some of the latest innovations that have been released, as well as some of the roadmap priorities leading into 2026 that the development team is going to continue building out on our revolutionary Quest platform. So join us for that. All three you're able to register for by going to sourcepass.com/events. And do note, we are not going to have a December digital transformation webinar, which would be the week of Christmas. And we'll be back with both series starting in January. So a couple quick housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any questions for Jolynn while we go, the Q&A is live, so please pop your questions in. And if we don't get to them in line during the presentation, we will revisit those at the end. And following today's session, you're going to receive a link for a survey. We'd love to get your feedback. As I mentioned, today's subject was actually created based upon recommendation by one of our prior audience members. So we do take these into consideration as we plan our schedule. And this is perfect timing because we're working on building out our schedule of training through the first half of next year. Right now, it's an active item our marketing team's working on. So with that, let me go ahead and turn the floor over to Jolynn, who is going to lead today's discussion. Jolynn, the floor is yours.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Dave. Appreciate it. And like Dave said, welcome everyone to our session today. We're going to be talking about working with Microsoft Excel, really kind of going beyond the basics and beyond some of the topics that we've discussed in our previous sessions. I really want to start with kind of when we talk about smarter data in Excel, it's amazing to me, and Dave talks about the history that both of us have had here using Excel since it was first released, and there is so much that has changed, of course, from 40 years ago to where we are today, but even just in the past 6 months. We have tools that are built into Excel today that we didn't have 6 months ago. We have automation features that we can be using. We have tools that will help us to gain deeper insights into our data. Even if it's something that we've had for years, they have made things even easier for us to use. So a couple of the features I'm actually going to be talking about today are going to be features that have been around for a while, but we may not be using them, or we may not be using them to their fullest extent. One of those options is actually going to be pivot tables. There's some features within pivot tables that I'm surprised that when I teach pivot tables, that some people are not taking advantage of some of these tools that I personally use on a daily basis. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm on this worksheet here in Excel 365, and I'm using the desktop version. I have this list of company orders. Now, it doesn't really matter what the data structure is, just kind of think of the concept behind this feature. But if I have columns and rows of data like this, where this is an invoice was placed, what did the company purchase, who was their salesperson, what were the products, that kind of information. It can be really any type of data. If you want to answer questions based on the information within this large amount of data. This happens to be just over 1,400 records. It's not super big, but if I want to ask it questions or get analysis out of this information, you can click a button. We don't have to do much more than just click a button and choose from the options that show up on the screen. This is a feature that is located on your Home tab of the ribbon, and it's called Analyze Data. It's way over on the right-hand side of the screen on mine right now. By the way, if you don't happen to see it, you may need to add the command to your ribbon. You can do that by customizing your ribbon. Just add this command to be available. Mine did automatically add, but I have had students in the past tell me that they don't see it. Just so you know, you might need to customize it to add it, but I got to tell you, it's going to be the best icon you have. But what it does is as soon as you click on it, if you have a range of data that you are selected within, I didn't even select the range, I was just active on a cell inside of a range, it automatically opens a window on the right-hand side. This is actually powered by Copilot, just so you're aware. So I do have a Copilot license, but on the right-hand side, it's giving me information that it analyzed automatically out of this range of data, and it wants to know, do I want to actually insert this information? So the first one that it's giving me is I could ask it questions about my data up at the top of the window. It has suggested questions that I could be asking it after it analyzed, like the percent of total of the extended price for each salesperson? Or do I want to see the total unit price of specific products over a ship date range? It's also showing me that it could automatically insert a pivot table. It could insert a pivot chart. It has got different chart options. It's got unit price. It's got things based on country. It's got things based on the extended price and the quantity by product. It's got all these examples of what it could do if we wanted it to. So let me show you an example. What if I wanted to actually use this pivot table where it's taking the extended price and the quantity by the product name? If I click this icon, Insert Pivot Table, I'm instantly in a pivot table. I didn't have to manually create a pivot table. It automatically gave me a new sheet called Sheet 1, of course, and here's my pivot table of that data. So when I click on a cell inside that pivot table, I know that I'm in a pivot table because I get my pivot table field list on the right, I get my pivot table tools on the ribbon, and it automatically filtered my range of data, gave me a unique list of every product that was in those orders. Then it gave me a sum of every product. It's got a sum of the extended price, and it has a sum of every quantity of every product that was sold. All I did was click. Now, that to me is a smart way of working with Excel. In the past, creating a pivot table was not that easy, especially when they first came out. I wasn't a huge fan. I mean, it was okay once I got familiar with it, but I got to tell you, today, creating a pivot table is very much different. Now, of course, if I go back to that original worksheet, I still have other analysis that is being displayed on the right-hand side that I could also use. Because what if I wanted one of the pivot tables, I should say pivot charts, that it was suggesting that it could use? What if I want this one called unit price by salesperson? I could click Insert Pivot Chart. It's going to give me a brand new worksheet. On that worksheet, it's going to have a pivot table, which is the data that's being used in the pivot chart. I can, of course, select the chart, make changes to the chart by using all the tools on the ribbon, but the pivot table and the pivot chart are directly connected. And both of those are directly connected back to the original data source. So we can very quickly and very easily analyze a range of data by using an icon called Analyze Data. I was so thankful when Microsoft gave us that feature, but it doesn't give you every scenario of what it is that you may want to get out of your information. So it is a little lacking, so to say, and sometimes it does have difficulty analyzing your data. If you don't have your data set up appropriately, it will not work for you. Back on the original data set that I was using to analyze this data, you do want to make sure that your information doesn't have any empty columns or empty rows separating the values, and you want to make sure that you have clearly defined headings at the top of every column. Okay, so those are some criteria, otherwise it does not analyze it appropriately. And you can't be in compatibility mode, which, as Dave and I talk about history of Excel, you can't be in an older version of the file. So if this was an older version before this feature became available, we wouldn't be able to analyze it. So sometimes you might go to use something and it doesn't work. But like I said, it is somewhat limited on the analysis that it's going to do on its own. So what if you wanted to create a pivot table yourself and be able to choose exactly what it is that you want to see in your pivot table? Well, you can do that at any time. And I'm just going to close my Analyze Data pane on the right-hand side. I'm just going to click on any cell within my range of all of these company orders. And what if I want to analyze this further than I can get with my typical filter, my sorting, and my typical formulas that I use, which can be somewhat limited or not easy for us to use. We want to find smarter ways to actually analyze the data, and we could do that with a pivot table. But a pivot table can be created multiple ways. One was with that analyzed data icon that I just mentioned, or you could go to the Insert tab of the ribbon. On the left-hand side, you can actually click Recommended Pivot Tables. This is going to open up a dialog box. What it does is it selects your range of data, quickly analyzes it, and says, hey, here's some recommendations as to pivot tables you might want to use to analyze this data set. So it's automatically giving you recommendations similar to what it did with that an analyzed data icon. But what you're going to see is a live preview of the data from your range of cells. And on the left-hand side, whichever icon you click on, it shows you a preview of it on the right-hand side. So if I want to use any of these, all I have to do is be on the one I want to use, click the OK button, and it by default will create a new pivot table on a new sheet. So it by default moves the pivot table to a new sheet, creates it there. Now, I could keep it, or what if I needed to change it? Because what this is doing right now is every time a pivot table is created, whether you create it from scratch, you create it from the analyzed data, you create it from the recommended pivot tables, it's giving you a pivot table field list on the right-hand side. And that is a list of all of the column headings that were in your original data set. And you can see that I have country and I have unit price. At the bottom of the pivot table field list is 4 squares. Down in those 4 squares in the rows box is the name of the field that we have in the pivot table called country. So in column A, it's a unique list of every country. In the values box at the bottom right is the field for the unit price. So in column B in the pivot table, it's actually showing a sum of the unit price. What if I also needed to see the product name? We could simply go to the field list on the right, click the square in front of the name of the field, product name. It's going to automatically add it to the pivot table. In column A, you will see first an alphabetized list of all of the different countries. Then indented by default will be the name of every product, alphabetized as well. But what happened in column B is it gave us a subtotal of each of those products. So when I look at Argentina, it's showing me every product that was sold within Argentina and giving me the subtotal of the units price in column B. But then it's got Austria, then it's got the next country, etc. So what it's doing is only showing the individual products that were sold within those countries. If that country, no company in that country bought that product, we won't see it. But the best part is, what if you change your mind? The pivot table can be updated by clicking and unclicking the fields you want to see. So if I don't want the country, I unclick it, I'm still going to be left with the field that I already have, and it still has unit price. But what if I also want to see the extended price? I could go to the right-hand side, click in front of the field called extended price. It's going to add a new column to the pivot table for that extended price. So now I'm seeing the extended price, which is the total of all the sales by product. But what this is kind of a drill in option. What if I wanted to see which salesperson sold those products? I could choose the salesperson field on the right-hand side. So it's a matter of us just clicking and unclicking, which can't get any simpler, to be able to limit what it is that we want to see. So now I'm organized in my pivot table by here's the name of every product, then it indents showing the name of every salesperson that sold that product. And we have a sum of the unit price, we have a sum of the extended price. So a pivot table is a great way for us to be able to drill in and only see exactly what it is we want to see. Back in the original data set, could I do what I just did? Probably not very easily. It would be hours when Dave was talking about, 22 hours for those other students to create their project, and they probably still weren't done at 22 hours. That's probably how long it would take us to do that here in this data set. But by using a pivot table, we're talking seconds, milliseconds to analyze this data. So back here, just so you could see starting from scratch, because what if I don't get a recommended? What if I'm not using the analyze data tool? What else can I do to create a pivot table? Well, you can create a pivot table just by simply going to the Insert tab. You can click the icon Pivot Table. It automatically selects your range of cells, and by doing it this way, you can also choose where do you want that pivot table to reside, because they don't always have to be in a new sheet. What if you want this pivot table here, right here in this existing worksheet? I'm going to choose in the middle of this dialog box, I'm going to click existing sheet, and then my cursor is in the location. I can actually choose which cell I want my pivot table to start on. I'm going to click this cell, M11, or M4, I guess I clicked on M4. I click on where I want it to be, I click OK, and it automatically gives me a placeholder of where that pivot table will be starting at. On the right-hand side, I have my field list that I can now add the fields that I want to have appear. So let's say that I want country. I want the name of the company. Just 2 clicks, and I now have a unique list first of every country in the list. But as soon as I clicked company name, I couldn't have done this in the original data set. It automatically gave me a list of here's every country, and then here's every company that bought something, and here's the country that they're in. Now, what did they buy? Well, click product name. You can see here's the products that this company bought, and this company is in this country. Now, what if I change my mind and I don't want to see the country? I uncheck it, it removes it. What if I want to see the salesperson? I can add the salesperson. What if I don't want product name? We keep clicking and unclicking to see or remove what it is that's in the pivot table. If I want the extended price, I also can add that in. Now, these are quick and easy ways that we can be analyzing our data. But let's take this just a little bit further. What if you actually want the sum of extended price, but you also want to know the average of the extended price? With a pivot table, we don't have to have that in our original data set. We can have it be available just within the pivot tables we need it in, because each pivot table can be displaying different information related to the data set. So let's say that I want the extended price, but I want an average, not a sum. I want the sum too, but I also want an average. I can add the same field twice or more if I need to. So what I'm going to do is on the right-hand side, I'm going to take my field extended price. I'm going to drag it down to the values box at the bottom right of this field list. And as soon as I release my mouse, it has added another column to my pivot table. So column O is now the same as column N, sum of extended price 2. But I want it to be an average. By default, all numbers when brought into a pivot table sum, but you can go to any of the numbers in column O, do a right click, and from that right click, you can go to Summarize By. And from the Summarize By, you can choose from any of these functions. So if I choose average, it's now going to say average of extended price 2. Don't like the title. I'm going to go to cell O4, and in the formula bar, I'll just get rid of the 2 at the end because it is the average of extended price. I probably want to keep it, but I didn't need the 2. It only put the 2 because each one has to be a unique name in the pivot table. So both of them couldn't be sum of extended price. But just so you can see, it can be very easy to manage the data within a pivot table. Right-clicking is a menu that will help you to manage the data inside the pivot table. Like if I want to format my average of extended price differently than the way it is right now, I can right click on that number again, and instead of just changing the summarized values by, I can click on number format. And I can choose what formatted option I want. Maybe I want it to be currency. Maybe I want it just to be a number and 2 decimals. Whatever it is you want, you choose the format, click OK, and it automatically updates every number within that field, which is pretty easy to be able to do. So we manage things by right-clicking on them. It makes it much easier than other ways. So just so you could see that. Now, but I want to change my mind again, because what if I want to filter this data? We have standard filtering capabilities like you do in a regular Excel worksheet, but we can do things a little bit differently here. If we happen to go to the row labels, here it happens to be M4. If I click this drop-down arrow, up at the top I can choose which field within column M I want to filter or sort by. I'm going to keep it on company name. And I'm going to say that I actually want to only see specific companies. I could click to select all the companies that I want to see, then click OK. And it's going to filter my list to only show those companies. That's not a bad way to do it. But if you want to change your mind, you go back to that drop down again, clear your filter from company, or simply change the companies you want to see. It's okay to do that. You could, but that's not always super easy. So what if I know that I want to be able to, I want to filter by country, even though I don't see it. I want to be able to filter by salesperson, and I want to be able to quickly and easily change my mind on which salesperson I want to see. And what if I only want to see specific orders based on dates? The dates they were ordered. I want to know how many products were ordered or which products were ordered during a time period. We could do those kind of things by using some filter choices that are built into tables. We have an option called slicers, and we have an option called timelines. Timelines only work with date fields. But let me show you how these could work. If you are clicked anywhere within your pivot table, you can go to the ribbon to the Pivot Table Analyze tab. And in this filter group, you can choose Insert Slicer. Choose the fields that you're going to want to filter by, then click OK. You will end up with 2 windows, and I'm going to slide these windows over here. I'm going to move these slicer windows over here so that I can see my data a little bit better and I can see my slicers. But if I want to modify the slicer, I'm clicked on it. I have a new slicer tab on the ribbon. I can change the color of the slicer window. I can change it to be more than one column. I can change the height of the buttons inside the slicer. But how do they work? That's the key. Well, if I go to this country slicer, and let's say that I only want to see the orders that were placed for companies within the USA. If I click the icon in the slicer window for USA, it just filtered the pivot table by USA. What if I only want to see the USA orders for Laura Callahan? If I click the name Laura Callahan, I'm now only seeing orders from the USA for Laura Callahan. It's filtering by both slicers, so we can filter a filter to filter a filter, like a query for a database. But if you want to clear the filter, like if I want to clear the filter from country, I can go back to the slicer at the top right, click the clear filter icon. Brings back all the countries, but I'm still filtered by salesperson. If I only want to see Laura, great. But what if I want to see Michael or I want to see Ann Dodsworth? I can continue to select other salespeople, but if I want them all back again, I can clear the filter at the top right of that slicer. So these slicers allow us to very quickly and easily filter our data without having to jump through hoops to do that. Okay. But let me take that just a step further. I'm going to click back on the pivot table because what if I want to filter by dates? I'm going to go back to the Pivot Table Analyze tab. I'm going to go to the filter group again and click Insert Timeline. From this Insert Timeline, I'm going to choose the date field for order date. I'm going to click OK, and it automatically gives me in the middle of the window a timeline. I can use this timeline to filter by month, by quarter, by year, or by day. Right now, by default, it comes in as by month. So I slid the bar over to the left so I can see it says 2025 January. I have February. If I click this bar, this gray bar right here under the names of the months, it automatically is filtering the pivot table to just show orders for those specific months. If I want to see things by quarter, by year, etc., go to the top right of this order date timeline window, click months, choose what option you want, and it will change this grid at the bottom to be related to that time frame. So now I'm on quarters. So if I want to see quarter 3, quarter 2 for 2025 orders, it always gives the next year as well. So it has 2026 available because it's ready to go for the next year. But just so you can see, a timeline can be a great way to help you limit what it is you're seeing. But what if I want a chart to go along with all of this? You can click on your pivot table. You're still filtered by those slicers and timelines if you had applied any of those, but you could actually create a chart that corresponds with your pivot table by going to the Pivot Table Analyze tab again on the ribbon. On the right-hand side in the Tools group, click the icon Pivot Chart. You could choose from the different chart types on the left-hand side. If you want to do a sunburst, a tree map, you want to do a waterfall, Pareto, etc., choose the one and then the subtype going across the top. Click OK, and you will automatically have a chart to go along with your pivot table. Now I'm just going to move mine over here. I've kind of got a little busy window going on here. I'm going to change the size of a couple of these things here. Just so you could see, we can always move things around. Now, of course, your chart came in very large. It's got a lot of squished data right now. I'm not even going to change the size of it or anything. You do have chart tools on the ribbon when you are selected on a chart, just like a normal chart would give you. But what happens if I filter by using my slicers? What if I go back and I say, I only want to see USA orders? If I do that, it updates the pivot table and it's going to update the chart to go along with it. If I say I want to see, what if I want USA and Canada? I'm already filtered by USA. If I go to the country slicer, I can click on this icon at the top right. It's called Multiple Select. If I click that, I could click Canada, and I'm now filtered by Canada and USA. It's going to update the chart and the pivot table to match. So they can work together. You could actually have these on a dashboard, on a separate sheet. You can have all of the pivot tables, all of the charts, all be corresponding together based on your slicers and your timelines, so that at any given time somebody wants to see something different, all they have to do is change it. So these are smarter ways of using Excel. And if you have not discovered these pivot tables or how easy they can be to use, you definitely want to give them a try. Creating a pivot chart to go along with the pivot table, of course, can be a very highly recommended option to do as well, so you get that visual representation. But using the filters that I showed you by using the slicers, using the timeline, those are things that I use on a daily basis. Highly recommend those types of options. Okay. But there's some other things that I want to make sure that we have enough time today to talk about how we can use in Excel. Now, when it comes to using Excel, there are some hidden features that I think people see on the ribbon, but they don't always understand exactly how good they can be to use. I'm going to go to this worksheet called bin orders, where I have a column of dates. So it's historical information about our company is in a farming community and we make grain bins, and we have a list. I kept just the 2 columns of data showing here's the dates starting in 2027 or 2017, I should say, all the way down through October of 2025. And then there's a list of all the bins that have been ordered. If I want to use this data, this historical data, to be able to predict what might happen in the future based on the past orders, what might happen over the course of the next 6 months, the next year, the next 24 months, whatever I want to do, we have built-in ways to do that. A few years back, Excel added some forecasting functions to their list of 450 plus different functions. We have different Forecast.ETS options that we could be using to help us forecast our data, where we can have different, what's the historical start date we want, how far out do we want it to go. We can do that, but it only analyzes dates and a value. So you have to have a date column, you have to have a value column to be able to take advantage of using these features. So that's why I got rid of the rest of the data for less confusing for the demonstration here today. But I'm going to go ahead and select this range of data. I just did a quick keyboard shortcut, Control-A, and it selected my whole range without me having to click and drag. And I'm going to go to my Data tab of the ribbon. On the Data tab, on the right-hand side of the ribbon, you're going to find a group called Forecast. This is where you can find your what-if analysis tools, but I'm going to use this feature called Forecast Sheet. By the way, these what-if analysis tools have been in Excel for as long as I can remember. They weren't in the very first versions of Excel, but they have been there for over 20 years, 25, probably 30, over 30 years. I won't demonstrate those today, but we could always do that in another session. Just so you're aware, we have this other feature called Forecast Sheet. So in this forecast group, if you click the icon Forecast Sheet, first Excel came out with these forecast functions, but quickly realized that you had to really understand forecasting to be able to use those. And I am not a forecasting expert. So they weren't that easy for me to figure out. Yes, I could get them figured out, but did I understand them? Absolutely not. I want to be able to take my historical data and just let the computer do that work for me. That's what this does. It is showing you right now that it's doing use historical data to create a forecast sheet. And basically it's showing you an example of a chart at the top. But I'm going to go to the bottom left and click options, because right now I can see in the middle of this window it says forecast end. It's going to go all the way out to October 1st of 2027. I want to just go out the next year. So I'm going to say I want to go out to 10/1 of 2026 with the predictions. And then under these options, I can actually see where do we want the forecasting historical data to start from. I'm going to say I actually wanted to start from 2020. You know, if you had some years in there that you don't want to use in your analysis, this is how you can change it. Because we might not want to use COVID years, we may not want to use specific years. We can choose which years we want to go back to. Now that's quite a few years that I'm going back. I might even change it to say 2022 or 2024 for my when do I want my forecast years to start. But you make that prediction yourself. You go ahead and choose that. Then all you have to do is click create. It is going to do the rest of the work for us. What it is using, just so you know, on the left-hand side, it's got a confidence interval where when we get the chart and we get the data, which is going to go on a new sheet, by the way, it's going to analyze this forecasting. It's going to give us a column of what the forecasting values are up till a year from now. But then it's going to give us a column that is going to give us the lower confidence level. So if we're not 100% sure we're going to meet that prediction, we could say, let's just go down to the lowest confidence level, or we could go up to a higher confidence level. We already know we are going to have a big order coming in, whatever, we could use an upper level confidence. It uses this 95% confidence interval level to begin with, but won't go through all that. I do have some links in your handout that you can use for that. But it knows to use the timeline range as the dates. The value range is going to be the actual values. I'm going to click Create. I get a brand new worksheet with a chart sitting in the middle. I can move it, I can resize it. But what this chart is actually displaying is the number of current bin orders. Then it actually continues on our prediction dates of going out to the future, and it's showing a darker orange of the actual forecast, but then it's going to have an upper confidence and a lighter orange also of the lower confidence level. But what is it doing in the columns? Well, if you look at the columns, it has the original historical data, but it didn't start predicting until down below here in 10/1 of 2022. So that's the data set that it's actually looking at starting from. And if I click in any of the column C values, you can see that it's using a Forecast.ETS function to analyze. This is the prediction, or this is the historical values, till I get down to my predicted values down here. So based on this historical data, this is what it's predicting out from starting in November this next month all the way through October of 2026. And then the lower confidence numbers are over here in column D, and in column E are the upper confidence level predictions that it's doing for us. So it takes all that historical data, analyzes it, and gives us our predictions. But just so you know, the upper and lower confidence levels are actually using the forecast.ets.confident, CONFINT functions. So it's using these functions that Excel came out with a couple years back, but it's doing all the analysis for us. So all we have to do is basically click buttons. Talk about a smarter way to be taking advantage of Excel. Pretty cool that we have those. So that's our forecast sheet feature that we have in Excel. The next option that I want to talk about is actually data validation. Data validation, very briefly today, I want to talk about how to use data validation, because a lot of times data validation is going to be used in things like lookups. You might have, like on this worksheet, I have a bunch of employee information. And if I want to look up a specific employee number, I can do that with a formula. But this particular cell A6 has a drop-down arrow. And I wanted to explain how these can be created. One way to create a drop-down list like this is to actually do it with data validation. So to give you a different example of how I could do that, let me see if I have a different sheet I could use. Well, I could just use the same one. Let me use the same one, and I'll just recreate it right here on A6. So how that got created was I just went to the Data tab of the ribbon. I went to the Data Tools group. First I clicked on the cell where I wanted it to appear. Then I clicked the icon for data validation. This allows us to validate the information that is going to go on a cell. I'm going to go to the Settings tab where it says Allow Any Value. I'm going to click on the drop-down and choose List. So in the source, I can choose what the list of the values is that I want it to use. So let's say that I actually want it to use the source of all of the employee ID numbers. All I have to do is select that list of employee IDs, click OK on this data validation, and it's going to automatically give me a drop-down list of all of those values. So that's one quick way of how data validation can actually be used. Data validation is one of these features built into Excel that I use regularly, whether it's on blank cells or it's on cells that have existing values on them. we can set up data validation to say, on this cell, I don't want a number entered that is greater than 150. It has to be 150 or less. We have limitations then that can be entered on that cell. They would get an error if they tried to enter something outside of the validation. Just so you know, data validation is a great option, but we only have a few minutes left, so I won't take it any further because I do want to talk about a feature that is in Excel recently added called an XLOOKUP. In the past, I used to use VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, which were for horizontal and vertical lookups. I would use the match, the index. We had all these different ways to look up information and find specific values. As of today, I only use XLOOKUPs because they can do an H or a V lookup, and they have a built-in error code. Let me show you how this could work. If I go to cell B6, I want to look up the employee ID number coming from A6, and I want to be able to find that information within row 9 and down of all of this employee data. I want to match the name, the department, the earnings, and the region with this list. I want to match that employee ID number. So on B6, I can do equal X, double click lookup, and it right now in my arguments, I can see that it's looking for the lookup value. Well, I wanted to look up A6. Then I put in a comma, and it wants to know, well, what is the lookup array? Where is the information going to come from that it's looking up? That's going to be column A. That's going to be A10 all the way down through A49. So I can put in that range of where it's going to find that lookup value. Comma, it wants to know, well, where's the answer going to come from? Which column in that same data source is going to give me the answer? Well, the answer is coming from B10 through B49. So I can use those ranges to automatically find that data. So with a VLOOKUP or an HLOOKUP, it was a little bit more difficult. We had to choose the table array, we had to count the columns, or we had to count the rows down. It was a lot more difficult. And it didn't have as many arguments as the XLOOKUP does. I'm going to put in a comma. It migrates to the next cell. Oops, for some reason mine lost my lookup value. Let me add that back in here real quick. That was totally my fault. So now it's caught up to me. So I have my lookup value. I have the range of cells I wanted to look in to find that value that I'm looking up. Then it has the return array. Now I want it to, if there's an error, I want it to give me a specific error. So it has a built-in error code, so we don't have to use if error. It's built into the XLOOKUP. I'm going to say if there's an error, I want it to say invalid employee ID. Then I can do Control Enter and I automatically have it matching whatever employee ID number I look up. It's going to change to find the name of the person I want to look up. Is that the only way this can be used? Absolutely not. So let me give you another example. I'm going to just copy these headings and paste them over here. And let's say I do want to look up an employee ID number. I'll just copy an employee ID number, and then I actually want to find their name. I want to find all of this data. I don't want to find just one thing at a time. I want to find all of these things at one time. I can do the XLOOKUP to find all of these at one time instead of one formula at a time to find something. And it doesn't have to be looking up the employee ID number. It could be looking up anything within the range and then finding the corresponding values as well. But with an XLOOKUP, I'm going to start here for the name. I'm going to have it populate the name, the SSN, the region, the department, and the earnings in one formula. I'm going to start on I3. I'm going to do equal X. I'm going to say I want to look up whatever employee ID is on H3, comma, where is it going to find that lookup value? Well, that's still going to be A10 through A49 because I still need it to look within that list, but it doesn't have to be the first column of the table array in a VLOOKUP. But just so you know, I can have it look in any column. But the key to this is, what's the return array? I can select all of these columns to be the return array. I'm going to add in an error value and say employee ID not found in case they enter one that isn't valid. I'm going to control enter, and it automatically matches up with the name, the SSN, which if it had leading zeros, it cut those off because I didn't format the cell. But you could format it. It found the region, it found the department, and it found the earnings. Every time we change to a different employee ID number, it's going to automatically update, finding the corresponding information out of the list all at one time. XLOOKUP has a lot more advantages to it than we had with the old versions of lookups, HLOOKUP, VLOOKUP, match, index. We don't have to use those anymore. We have this feature instead. But what happens if I put in an invalid employee ID number? It's going to come back with employee ID not found because that's how I spelt it incorrectly. When I did it, I just fixed the formula so it automatically updated. So just so you can see, we can create one formula and have it populate multiple columns of information at one time with the XLOOKUP. So if you have not tried that XLOOKUP, it is a smarter way to do a lookup than we've ever had in the past. So definitely want to check that feature out. Okay. Then I'm going to go to this worksheet called Maps. And in this worksheet, I have just a little bit of geographical data. I don't have a ton, but just to give you an idea as to a couple of features that we can actually use that are geography related in Excel. First off, I have this list of years, states, and visitor counts, and I'm going to select the states and the visitors. Not sure if you were aware of this, but on the Insert tab, we actually have a map that we can use with geographical data, whether it's countries or it's states, it's provinces, it's counties, whatever. It has a connection directly with Bing Maps. So if I go to that map and choose Filled Map, I already have activated mine, but if it's your first time doing it, you'll have to click the Agree button and it connects to Bing. But it automatically will take the values and highlight them within a map for each of the states. Now you get your chart tools on the ribbon, so if you want to modify it, you want to add labels to it, those kind of things, it does give you the ability to be able to do that. So you can always add your chart labels so you can see the values going along with them. So those are some pretty great options that we have with geographical data. But there's another one that I want to mention, and I'm going to actually select these states again, and then I'll show you the countries, how that works as well. But from the Data tab of the ribbon, you can select geographical data, and then in the data type, choose geography. It adds an instant connection to the cells you selected to the internet to get geographical information based on those areas. If I'm on B2 where it says Oregon, I can click this icon to add a column, which will give us a new column in the next blank column based on state information. So you can see it's got what is the largest city, building permits, it's got population, etc. So if I click population, it's going to automatically give me the population for each and every state going all the way down. If I want to add another column, I click on it. I can choose whatever column it is that I want, largest city. It automatically will find that largest city for those states. So it has this way to directly connect to the internet for us to work smarter on the data. I have actually seen people go and look things up on the internet. We can let the computer do that work for us. As you can see in this data type, it also has stock connections and currency. Okay, so not just geography. You could be using those as well. I'm surprised Microsoft hasn't expanded that arena for a couple of years now, but a lot of people aren't aware of how easy that is to use. And if I click California, just to show you an example, if I click California, I can actually access just information based on California or whichever one I want as well. We have direct connections to whatever it is we need to look up. But let me show you here with countries. If I select these countries and click that geography again, it's going to automatically connect to these countries just like it did to states within the US, where then we can add in information to automatically be populated based on these as well. So if I want to know what their major capital or their city is, it can automatically populate that. Now, for some reason, mine decided not to go all the way down, but that's okay for right now, just so you could get an idea as to how you could be using these. They're pretty cool. So Excel probably has a lot more to it than we take time to investigate. There are some other things that I'm sure we'll be getting to as Dave with Sourcepass here does some reviewing of what we're going to do next year. Like on the Home tab, we now have this Excel labs that we could be using with built-in agents for Microsoft Copilot. We've got some pretty exciting things that are either already here or that will be coming shortly to Excel. Even as easy as going to the Insert tab and inserting a checkbox, those types of things have been added to Excel recently as well. So sometimes it's a good idea to kind of look around on your tabs and see what's new, see what has changed. Okay. You can always, of course, go to the Help tab of the ribbon and look up additional information on these features, or of course, attend one of our training sessions. So Dave, did we have any questions come through as we wrap up the session today?
No, actually, no, not to date. We have not received any questions, so I'll give folks an opportunity if they have any questions to enter those in the Q&A. We do want your feedback. Please go ahead and when you receive the survey, give us that feedback for both how we did in today's session and what you may like to see in future sessions. That would be outstanding. And if you have any questions or so forth regarding Excel, you can feel free to reach out to your client success manager at any time. Or if you ever have questions about this event or others, you can send an email to events@sourcepass.com, and that comes to not only myself, but Kat Irizarry, who's in the background. Thank you again, Kat, for everything you do on these sessions. And Kat just put in the chat the link to the SurveyMonkey survey regarding today's session. So you can, if in addition to the email you receive, you can access it through the chat right at this moment. So Jolynn, I don't think there's been any questions added to the Q&A, and so I think we're good. Everybody, thanks for joining us for today's session. Do give us about a week, and in that time, we'll get a recording of today's session posted in our video library. So if you're looking to share this with those who couldn't attend today's session live and want to share them with your organization, just check our video library page of prior webinars in about a week's time, and it should be live. And if it's not, and you want to ask a question or forget how to access it, send that email to events@sourcepass.com, and we'll be happy to point you in the right direction. So thanks very much for joining us today, and we'll see you in our next session. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.